Okay. Hi,
Right.
everybody. Thank you for joining us again. And this is our second time having a good discussion. Last month, we talked about developing your mastery, right?
Right.
We got really
Right.
good feedback, and that's why we're following up today with another one of our students from Sentient Academy Business School, Mark. How do you say your last name again, Mark?
Burrell,
Burrell.
B-A-R-L, but it's pronounced a little differently. So
Cool. Well, we are glad to have you join us because you finished the business school course, and I'm so glad to see your actual plan of action. So we're gonna kind of not rip it apart, but give you some live feedback today as we talk about, that very first year of your career.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I have to say, there's a lot of great stuff on there. So I think it's right on track, and we'll just talk about little things here and there that hopefully will be helpful to you and helpful to everybody that's tuning in.
Yeah. So today the main audience is for someone who finished school, if you went to our school program, or if you are more of a self-study, you spend a lot of time learning online, going to workshops, or even any point of your career, if you feel like I need a big jump, that very first year when you make the switch, it's really critical, right?
Absolutely. Well, and there are even some people that are doing a job maybe that they don't like so much, and are making that transition into full-time painting.
To full-time, right?
Yeah, and I know a lot of people that have successfully made that transfer, and so that that has different challenges, right? But some in Mark's situation, you're a young guy. How old? You're in your 20s, I assume, right?
Yeah, I'm 22.
22, which is great age to jump right in with both feet, and you have a lot of energy, and you don't have any kids, right?
Yes.
So
you get all the time in the world.
You got all the time in the world, trust me. And some freedom there to really kind of craft the lifestyle that you want to have, which is really exciting, right?
So before we start, we want to make sure everybody understands, the planning, the business side of things, it's important. And that part of things you're going to start seeing more and more after you start that transition, right? After school, you're going to realize, oh, wow, I thought this whole time I'm spending my time and money learning my craft, become the best painter of my class. And all of a sudden you see this cliff that you're going to jump off.
Right.
So even though you finish school, doesn't mean that you just stop learning, right? You're starting to enter into the professional world. That means, you want to start thinking about going to professional workshops.
Right.
And what are the benefits of those professional workshops? Because they are kind of expensive in some.
Well, compared to a university, they're super cheap, right?
Yes, compared to university, they're a lot more affordable.
Less than a textbook.
And then
usually
nowadays you get all the online options. It's even more affordable.
Right.
So there are a lot of benefits to attend a professional workshop. What are those benefits?
Well, I think a couple of things when you're attending workshops like that. Well, even a situation like this, I get to see Mark's face. He gets to see my face. We get to interact and talk a little bit, even though it's online. You're just having that kind of interaction separates that distance, and then you start building a connection there, right?
Yes, networking,
right? It's such a big part of. You go to learn, of course, how to paint or draw or whatever you're doing, but a big part of it is not only the connections within, with the instructor, but also connections with other artists. I've seen that certain workshops, like I taught one in Northern Utah about 8 years ago, and there's still a couple of people that met in that workshop that are still kind of sustaining each other with, compliments or like critique or
opportunities, all kind of stuff. Right?
And so, anytime you can make those kinds of connections, I think it's really an important part, right?
And with nowadays, all the options out there, you can attend in-person workshops. That's great because you get to meet them in person, or with Sentient Academy plus a lot of other people out there, there are a lot of online options you can attend. Even though you won't be face-to-face, but we're trying to make things a lot more interactive, where you can really get to meet the students or the instructors, having that live interaction, right? So with all those options out there.
And let me mention one other thing about that is, I think it's important too, as somebody that's taking a workshop from an instructor, one thing I found, the people I remember more, it's a real simple thing. And I tried to remember to do it when I was younger too, taking a lot of workshops. Are we still live?
Yeah, I'll check that.
You can still see us, okay?
Yeah, but the YouTube might be weird. But
okay.
Yeah,
well, in any case, it's important to write a little thank you and say maybe some of the things you picked up and learned, because what you're doing after kind of the whole group has left and gone away, in order to like have one more kind of remember this moment, help the instructor remember you by, you know, a little thank you note or something like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be something that you send in the mail, but just a little text or an email afterwards. At least I've found that I've remembered people that have done that over. Not that I need extra thanks or anything like that, you know. But I just know that I did that. I did that as a habit in art school, and I know, especially with one instructor who was, you know, to be honest, I really didn't enjoy their personality all that much, but then I sent him a thank you anyway, and that person's attitude absolutely changed towards me after that fact, you know. And so it's just interesting, little things like that, I think are really important as far as the business side of art, because one thing you'll begin to understand is that art is really, it's all about making these human connections, right, with people. And so you really want to, you know, take the time to do that. So,
and we have a couple workshops coming up. So if you're interested in learning something, that would be a good place to start out, is to look for professional workshops.
Yeah, we've got like John Cosby, who's, you know, a guy that he's the guy that designed the logo for, you know, the bent arrow of In-N-Out Burger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he's been around the block, and he's a great plein air painter. But there's a guy who's been there, done that sort of thing, and a great guy to take a workshop from, not only for his, you know, for his expertise on landscape painting. He's really great at like Southern California seascape kind of stuff. But the other thing about it is he's got just a lot of business sense too. You know, I've been on some trips with him to China and other places, and you know, it's always great to talk shop with him. And so those are the kinds of things you want to kind of get out of a workshop too. You know, some of those business side questions, and I find it's kind of rare actually that, you know, people really ask about that. You know, even during lunch, like people just go off and have their lunch instead of like sit with the artist they took taking a workshop from and actually talk business during the lunch hour, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, we have kind of, you know, those is the one thing, you know, a couple things with workshops, right?
And of course, you know, to answer this whole, what do I do first year to become a professional artist? We actually launched your gallery painting course, and that one you focus on top of your technique. You also focus on how to become a professional artist.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we go beyond the studying part, and you know, a big part about what you want to do at the point where you're getting your skill level up to where it needs to be. That's when you really need to think about, you know, a businessman would say branding, right? And you know, you're making a product. And a lot of artists, you know, they can even go 20 years and still not quite have a product in mind. You know, they're kind of jumping all over the place. You know, I had with an artist who's super talented and went to a really expensive art school. This is just a couple weeks ago, and you know, just expressing to me, you know, I just haven't found that thing that I want to kind of stick to still. You know, and he's in his, you know, late 40s. So wow. You know, you want to really think about it in terms of, you don't necessarily have to say the brand or the product, right? I think artists chafe at that. I know I have. But what we do need to say is like, where maybe spiritually or intellectually or socially, where's, you know, just a deep area of interest that we can dive into, that we know something about. You know, it could be maybe in your youth you're really into skateboarding, or you know, something like that. You know, skateboarding culture could be, you know, part of, you know, the art. And it could be even like, say you're doing representational work, you could, even have, realistic skateboard type or skateboard parks or kids doing skateboard kind of stuff.
Motion shots or whatever.
Now I know nothing about skateboarding, so I just throwing that out there as an idea.
Yeah. And
now in Mark's case,
part of your first year, kind of like extension from last time we talked about developing your mastery, at the same time you're finding about yourself and who you are, and starting to shape that voice. Right. Because you don't want to spend this whole year after school and then you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And you don't have a brand on an image or voice. Yeah. Then a year gone by, you create a lot of work, but when you approach the gallery, people don't know what you're doing there. Yeah. Right?
So, okay. Now we're talking about generals. Let's talk a little bit more specifically, Mark, about kind of your interests and what is it that you wouldn't mind spending, 10,000 hours, doing? If you had to,
go ahead.
Yeah, if you had to, if you had to make 1,000 paintings in the next 5 years, and you had to do it on one subject, what would you pick?
I have not yet found like a subject with plein air work. I've found it's really based on where I live, but I have found that capturing the effects of color and light, that's kind of what made me first fall in love with painting. That was my first exposure really to serious oil painting, was plein air work. And just being taught, like, here's how to observe light, here's how to observe color and temperature and those things. So I did want to ask you guys about that. Like, as a plein air artist specifically, how do I, like, a lot of my subject matter or my kind of inclinations is based on where I live, especially if I want to paint from life. So how would you guys recommend adapting, or, because you do plein air work as well, and you're excellent at it. So how would you recommend adapting that plein air mindset to living in different places in the country?
Yeah, no, that's such a great, important question. And part of it too is there's a little bit of, you, to some degree, if you have a certain amount of autonomy, is moving to a place that truly inspires you, right? But sometimes we don't have necessarily that luxury. For instance, like, say San Francisco super inspires you. Well, it's super expensive to live there, right? And there could be some barriers to entry. So it might involve a lot of, travel, or you could also look at your nearest town and say, well, maybe it's just cityscapes that I'm interested in. So you go into you kind of push yourself into cityscape kind of direction. Now, I get what you're saying about it's all about color and light. And I think that's a very a good way to think about it, because it also opens you up to maybe more than just painting one kind of subject that could maybe bore you over time. And you're known for your manner of painting more than maybe a certain subject. Okay. But I would say also there are certain things that people will begin to kind of expect out of you. Okay. And you'll also maybe gravitate towards, or what I found myself doing in plein air events, and I know a lot of other artists did this as well, is they kind of, to develop a rhythm and kind of a speed to your work, because you have to be fairly quick. You want to have certain kind of things that you're looking for, that you're driving around, and I like this kind of scene, or I like this moment of light where, it's mostly in shadow. You get beautiful rim lit. I'm looking up into the sun, into, the California hills or whatever. And you kind of get good at that. You kind of, because you kind of keep working on it. And maybe that's something that other people are responding to as you're painting that. So you start to develop a little bit of a following. And so one thing I found, I'd go to, one thing I did, or that happened, and it kind of naturally happened, was, these street scenes that I would do. Part of it because I was in San Francisco going to school, and then I'd go to these plein air events. And because I was really comfortable with the cityscape, and a lot of other artists weren't as much, I'd go out and paint the streets. And we'd always have, it seemed like every time I went to a plein air event, there would be a day of rain. Yeah. And as soon as I knew that it was going to rain, because I love, painting the wet concrete and stuff like that. I was out painting in the rain.
When
right?
everybody else is like,
they're like,
it's
oh
raining,
man, yeah,
right?
I can't paint right now. They're in the bar or
Yeah.
whatever, And so, but I would take that as an opportunity, and that's something I became kind of known for and good at. They're like, oh yeah, there's another street scene by Bryan,
And
kind of thing.
concrete.
Yeah, but I found that I started getting this kind of rhythm. I knew how to handle it. And so I knew I could do it well. And anyway, that's the kind of thinking you want to do, so that you can kind of build a brand, as well as, give yourself some room, like you say, with the color and light, the manner in which you're painting. But at the same time, you start to get a reputation for a certain thing, because in order to stick in somebody's mind or in a group of collectors' minds, you have to kind of get to be known for something. And that's when, like, Plein Air Magazine contacted me, because I'd been to so many plein air events and, started winning awards with some of these street scenes. That's when they asked, when they first started their kind of DVD program or whatever, they're like, we want you to do an instructional DVD on cityscape painting, and then, things continue to snowball with that sort of thing. So you don't have to conquer the whole world. It's just too overwhelming to do that. What you just need to find is like an area of strength. And when you really solidify that area of strength, then you kind of expand out from there.
Remember, did I talk about the 3 things to find your competitive advantage in the business course? If not, well, some of you're not in the course. I'll repeat that real quick. For me, myself, I always look at 3 things. Number 1 is, what do they have that I don't have? Just look around, look at your competitors, everyone else, find out something that they have that you don't have. So you kind of know, okay, like, those are my weaknesses. And if I am going to compete with them, I'm probably not going to win because they have something that I don't have, right? By definition, I'm already out of the game. The next thing is you want to look at something that you have that they don't have.
Yeah.
For example, for you, that cityscape, raining, that's what you have that they don't have. The third thing is the key is make the number 2, like, what do you have, like, what you can do the best. Because by definition, something that you have that they don't have, it's your advantage.
Yeah.
So now you focus on that thing.
Yeah.
And not worry about what they have, but just focus on what you have that they don't have, so they cannot touch you. If you're able to do that, here's an example of that, right? Like, you find out something that you were so good at, then they just can't touch you.
Because here's the I think we have a question here.
Yeah.
But here's the temptation that we have, is that we see somebody, maybe an older painter, do something that is really extraordinary, maybe gets a lot of attention, wins an award or whatever. And the temptation is like, well, you kind of look at yourself like, well, maybe you kind of doubt yourself and what you're about and what you're trying to do, and then start to try and do that thing that somebody else is doing. So it's kind of really easy. And I'm not saying don't learn from that,
you do,
but don't get tempted too far from your path.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why you quickly go look at what they have, right? Be inspired to, get better. Right.
But still
then right
recognize,
away, find out what you can do that they can, compete with you, and then really focus on that.
Yeah.
So here's a good question is, how do you tell what separates the advanced artist compared to beginner or intermediate?
What's the difference?
Yeah. Like,
okay. So
advanced.
So I would say an advanced artist has maybe a clearer identity of who they are. And, artists are amazing. They can paint all kinds of stuff. And this is something, one of our gallery owners that we interviewed, he's, artists are incredible. They, if they wanted to paint this or that, they could, but they don't. They have some discipline, and they also know that they focus on something, this idea that they're about, right? It's less about being able to just paint anything they feel like, but start honing in on some ideas that and create a meaning behind those ideas. So a lot of this has to do with, I look at this as, a concept artist for a film or movie. They have a good sense of what this means, but they're more of a chameleon. They'll jump from, they'll create that world, and then they'll jump out of it and create another one. Well, as a fine artist, you actually kind of create that world, but you stay in it.
Okay,
And the reason
super
why you
helpful.
the reason why you stay in that world is that it takes so much time and energy and to create the depth into that world that it takes a lifetime, right? And sometimes I see, and I guess I'm guilty of it too, to a certain degree of jumping worlds, right?
Yeah, because you go to your sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
But
I'm saying,
world,
in your first 5 years, you should not be thinking about doing this.
Yeah.
I've been painting for 40, well, I mean, almost not 40 years, but about 35 years.
Yeah.
And so, after a while, you get a little bored, right? And you just jump in a little bit.
You gotta stay creative, do something for yourself, right?
But when I do that, I am always thinking about, even when I'm doing like science fiction work, I'm still thinking about how can I apply this technique to my cityscape?
Because this is your world, right? That's your when you see the signature of Bryan Taylor, you see this world that you created. And spend 30 years to live in it, to perfect it. So even though you're doing something here, but still it's gonna go back to that world.
So when I think about what my art is about, most of it has to do with things that are touched by humans. That doesn't mean I've painted some, landscape type stuff, but really what I'm about is like human civilization and what that means, and painting that and painting those environments, right? So that's what kind of brings me back to everything. And I always try and remember that's what I want you to do as well, is kind of figure out kind of your touchstone, that point and that's why I mentioned, things that things that are deeply important to you, whether it's childhood experiences, personal relationships you have, those kinds of things that are important. For instance, one of the reasons why I went into landscape painting instead of like other things, like figurative stuff, is I like to be alone. 2, I like to travel, and I like being outdoors. And so if I were being a figurative painter, even if I was, like the world's greatest figurative painter, I'd be really frustrated because I'd be spending time indoors and it would just be really hard on me. Now, Keith is different. He has that, he loves doing the portraits and the faces of figures. And so, but he's a real social guy, and, he likes to party. He likes to party with people.
I like to visit with people and get to know them. But at the same time, my family, they're having a hard time getting me to go outdoor, right? So that's you got to find out what is your water. You want to be that fish when you're in that water, you just feel like, oh,
it feels good.
I can swim, I can breathe, I love this thing. And that kind of ties into our next question here is, Elliot here, he's kind of scared of becoming a professional artist and just finding that balance of doing that as work, but also find joy for painting.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that answers that question, if you really love what you've picked, then that solves a lot of that. Because like I say, say you're a hardcore skateboarder, you get to hang out with skateboarders, you're out at the skateboard park. And so that scariness kind of goes away because you're in the thing that you absolutely love to do. Now, I get you take something you absolutely love to do and then you turn it into a job and a vocation. I understand that there are elements of that where you could kind of get sick of it to some
especially
degree.
When you're painting for someone else versus painting for yourself. And that's another big struggle, or that identity confusion part when you're becoming a professional artist, right?
Yeah, because when you're as a kid, my hobby was my favorite hobby was painting, right? I had other hobbies like fly fishing and skiing and different things, but when my greatest hobby became my vocation, I found out that I needed to hold on to some of these other hobbies in order to stay fresh and keep exercising and
continue to do that 10,000 hours, right? You got to stay fit in a way. Mentally.
Exactly. Yeah. And so go ahead.
Oh, I just had a question. How do you, so you're coming up with you say, okay, I know I want to do this. And then how do you marry that passion with a market, and figuring out say someone's like, my dad was a trash truck driver, and so like I just love garbage, like that's what I love more than anything in this world, and I just want to paint garbage, and so it's like, well, I don't know, kid, I don't know if that, how do you how do you marry that passion with a market that's actually going to pay for what you love?
Yeah, well, I actually know an artist that does paint trash, and so I can talk to you a little about that. He's Italian.
Oh.
And you can look him up, Giuseppe Celli. And he does some really beautiful trash.
That's not my story. I was just making up an example.
Yeah, no, totally. No, but
yeah.
So here's what I would look at. One of the things as an artist, you also need to be a voracious reader.
Okay.
You need to read a lot of things. You need to be watching documentaries or whatever. You need to know a lot about the world, right? And so, when I actually know quite a bit about trash. So let's talk about it for a second.
Okay.
So there's lots of movements. There's kind of the green movement that's going on all over the world, right? Where plastic that is kind of animals are getting caught up in it and stuff like that. And so one of the things that you could do that is kind of even beautiful is, there's like little crabs that hermit crabs that will actually appropriate a plastic bottle.
Oh yeah.
And that's their shell.
Or even the movie Happy Feet, they have the king with the plastic around his neck.
Oh, right.
Remember?
Yeah.
So
anyway, what that is an opportunity for creativity. If you're in the, if you're a sanitation technician or whatever they call it. I forget the politically correct term for it. But and what I'm saying is that you are tapping into a bigger movement of people that believe in recycling and things like that. And so if you can find the noble purpose behind what you're doing, and part of that's understanding human nature, there's a hierarchy of needs, right? And you'll find that there are groups that have these, passions about stuff. Yeah. And so that's what you're looking for, because those people will, obviously they'll be interested in that kind of stuff. Yeah. Now, one thing you can do, as you're thinking about it, what is, we were talking with another artist, and one of the things we talked about, he liked to paint was horses.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So anyway, we were talking about, well, that's a natural fit, because a lot of people of means have horses or tend horses, and so that's a good market, and he's a guy who could paint anything, right? But we were kind of talking about what it is that he was trying to find his way too. Yeah. In terms of what it is that he wanted to paint. So that's something that one thing you can look at is also it is a way to look at, there's the noble kind of purpose, or you can also look at the market side and say, what do rich people like to do? Right?
Yeah. They like to go hunting, safaris,
hunting.
Who did so well with wild animals, safaris type of thing, right? Yeah. So
that's something to look at. Or what about in your life, that if you had a ton of money, what would you go do? Right? And so another artist that we know, very famous, and we're hoping to have him on at some point, but he loves to hunt, and he'd go on these hunts and actually pay a lot of money because he was hunting, exotic animals. But then he'd meet like the Kennedys and like really high level politicians and things.
Yeah.
And they basically pay for his trip, because they're like, oh, wow, look at that painting that you're doing. Well, they're going out on a safari together. And, then you find out that
it's a moment, a memory they want to, preserve, right?
Right.
So, we could talk about this first year from a very dry kind of like, okay, I want to do 100 paintings in 3 months, and then website, kind of like what your original plan is, which is a great plan. But at the same time, you need to remember, just that quantity alone won't make your first year. Like a lot of stuff we are talking about today, that is the deeper side of things that will give you more depth. So yes, you want to go out to practice.
Yeah.
But practice alone will, if you don't do these thinking or explore or read and think about these things, the depth of your work is going to stay pretty shallow, right? Because you can only paint that much. But if you start thinking about these deeper questions, your depth is going to get deeper, and that's how you start to evolve like a professional artist with a name.
And instead of forcing yourself, like maybe the question that he was talking about, you know, Elliot, you know, the concern about like being afraid of it. If you approach on the side of inspiration and curiosity, then getting up and doing, you know, even 3 plein air paintings a day isn't gonna.
Yeah, it becomes part of your life, right?
Well, it's exciting too, because you know, maybe you like baked goods. You know, I certainly do.
I know. I still need to get that sourdough.
So you know, I'm going to be doing the Strata Challenge starting tomorrow, and in order for me to make it good, I got to have something tasty to paint. Then I get to eat it afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's just a way to reward myself. Right. And so it's the same principle. You know, with the thing that gets me out to paint and be excited about plein air painting. When I've done so many paintings over the years, I found I need to go travel. And so that's why I went to India. That's why I go to China. That's why I go to Cuba, is because it re-stimulates and gives me those kind of child eyes, to where it's like, instead of thinking, oh, I got to do another painting.
Another 30.
I think, oh, wow, this is such a cool place. This happens and this and stuff. And so I do it to kind of re-energize me, you know. And I found, you know, travel is an important part of that, you know, for me, to motivate me.
And we get to see a lot of those in this gallery painting series, because today you got the audio for the alleyway one. That's a great one. And there's the bowl of fish, and there's another one coming up with the market scene. So a lot of these things just kind of keep you going, and because your goal is to get 100 plein air in a quarter, right? And then you also say, I think it's 10 studio pieces. So for you to go from that 100 and then have that next level of energy to say, hey, after 100, I'm going to produce another 10, or actually you do that 10 within that 100. There's that next level of energy, because if you don't find this type of energy, you're going to drain yourself out really fast, right? Because you look at it as like a production line. Okay, here's 100. All right, I got to think of 10 ideas to do 10. Like it becomes like that really boring work.
And instead, right, you become inspired, and it'll just snowball, right? Okay, so let's go next. We kind of talked a little bit about the numbers, right? Yeah. Are there any questions about that, Mark, that you were having, as far as, you know, your how each week is going to look, and kind of pacing yourself and all of that?
Not particularly. I'm also going to do the Strata Challenge, so it won't set me back a month, but it's going to kind of move the timeline a little bit with that. But I'm super excited about that. So
great.
I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna try to probably take that month to do more soul searching, you know, and continuing to look for that sort of deep inspiration, you know, that ideas that can spark series of paintings, or like you guys said, like building a world.
I like that word series, because if you think about Bryan back then, at one point you're gonna have a one-person show or even a group show. And is it much better to kind of have some type of series, like continuity to your work, rather than random, here's a garbage, here's a skateboard, here's a wild animal, all over the place. Like from approaching galleries, having a body of work with some.
I found that people, when they buy a piece, they love it when it's part of a series.
Okay, there you go.
And really, but that's also a natural way. An artist has to develop a series if they want to have mastery in anything. Right. You have to have a series of work. You know, I know Cezanne, even though he's not maybe the best example, because he had a hard time learning how to draw, but he kind of invented, you know, apparently, you know, he's the grandfather of abstract art.
We talk about him every time. I think he's gonna either really love us for marketing or really hate us for pointing out his drawing skills. But it is what it is.
I mean, he sucked in drawing. Let's just be honest.
Be honest, you need to be like,
but the genius of what he did is he kept going, and he would do these long series of things. And so, when you see a series of bad paintings, sometimes it becomes good because it just has this continuity to it. It's interesting.
It's stuck in its own style.
Yeah,
remember
totally.
we look at that Instagram guy, the world's worst drawer.
Yeah,
the guy who draws like Napoleon Dynamite, and he's got a great following. And every drawing he draws famous people, and they are really just terrible drawings, but
they're hilarious and they're awesome
at the same suckiness.
Well, yeah, and he has got one of the stronger brands that I know, and because I scroll through thousands of bios, right? And that's the one I told you about because it actually stuck
in my head.
Yes, yeah, because it's so consistent the way he does it, and the way he posts. I can't remember his account. I wish I did, but anyway.
Anyways, you can look it up, but
yeah,
it's good to kind of not only work on your quantity. Of course, you need to think about quality, and then start to look at it from a deeper meaning standpoint, and then think of as a series. Okay, there are multiple dimensions to approach your goal, rather than just looking at it as 100 this quarter, 10 studio this quarter. It's good to have that goal, so you can reverse engineer it and say, okay, that means this month I need to paint that many of whatever, and then this week I need to accomplish something. Just kind of keep you on track, but don't get fixated on just the number. It's a multi-dimensional thing to accomplish.
At the same time, a number can be a way to take some emotion out of it if you're having negative emotional energy. So I realize sometimes you'll be in inspired mode, and other times you'll be in maybe not so inspired, right? And I always fall back when I'm not feeling as inspired, whatever the reason. I'm tired. I go for the number. Yeah. So that's how I mentally go. I switch back and forth. When I have to.
And you have to, because being a professional artist. Another answer for that, professional versus beginner and intermediate, you have a full-time. You paint 8 hours
no matter what,
plus more. No matter what, because today if you're working as a professional dentist, you don't just say, I don't feel like going in to clean teeth, I'm not going in. No, you go in, you clean that teeth.
Right? So have you ever come over and seen me say, I just don't feel like painting today? You've never come over.
You're always there. Just
you wouldn't know if I felt like painting or not.
But at least you put in your hours, and it's good to kind of see behind the scenes. You actually have those two modes. They're switching back and forth, because you do need to kind of. And I have the same thing when I was in the office. There are times where I just don't want to go in. After like month-end close, we already be up 3 nights in a row to close the quarter. I just feel like I don't want to go in, but that's my job. I just got to go in, and I put on this autopilot mode. And what I do is I just have this autopilot, really just a whole bunch of numbers on the screen, and I can just cruise through it and get my work done. And the next day, find a way to recharge. And then check my work from yesterday.
Totally. So
that was my favorite thing.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, that was my favorite thing about the business course from Sentient Academy, is that it provided this whole other dimension to being an artist, that on the days that I didn't feel like going in, it was my job. But the days that it was like, this is my job, it was like, yeah, but it's your passion, and it did help serve to balance it out. So thank you guys for that. That was huge.
And remember, you're building a lifestyle. If you want to be a professional artist, it's your life. Like, it's more than 10,000 hours. It just keeps going on and on and on and on. Like, you got to find a reason. And let me tell you, money should not be the reason.
Right.
Yeah. If you do it for money only, I mean, of course, money is part of it, but you can't do it only for money.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's one of those things where, I know a lot of people my age, and, I'm 43 now, which is scary, but this is the time to have like a crisis, or midlife crisis, right? Yeah.
I got it out of the way, so I don't have to deal with it.
You did?
Like 2 years ago, I had.
Good.
I knew it's coming. Remember, I told you I always look out 5 years. I knew that's coming, so I took care of it.
He scheduled it in. Yeah.
He's a lot better planning than I am. So
wow.
But with all of that, like, when you find that passion too that sustains you, when I have friends that are my age, going through the midlife crisis or whatever, can't wait till they retire, they're thinking, oh man, only 20 more years and I'm going to be done here. And what I'm thinking is like, I'm never going to retire. I don't want to retire.
Yeah. You
like,
actually living someone's
do.
retire life. If you think about it, though, this is why I'm doing this, because if you look at a lot of people, we know doctors, engineers, people who retire and say, finally, I can get an easel and paint. You live in a retired life.
Right.
If you think about it, people retire and they want to paint.
Yeah. Right.
And you're already living in it. So,
Yeah. And the other thing too is, okay, so first year out of school, the idea behind what we're talking about here is really you're kind of laying the foundation. You're getting the habits, you're building those habits so that they feel over time, they'll feel natural. And, in fact, if I don't paint, I feel really irritated, and I feel like something's off in my day because it's such a habit that, you have to, humans are very adaptable. They adapt to all kinds of environments and situations. We can adapt to so many different things. As when you teach your mind to have this kind of pattern, you will feel very comfortable in that pattern where that will be kind of that work mode will actually be your flow mode where you're safer, you're feeling good about things and stuff like that. So I think, building those habits, whether it's like, and one thing I've had to do is make some corrections, like, on and off with exercise. It's always, I've had been good at it, not good at it for years, but now as I get older, I have to be good at it, or I have to do it every single day. And so now I have like, an exercise bike that I pretty much have to trip over to get to my easel.
Yes.
And so I jump on that thing, and also it gets the blood flowing, stuff like that, right? And that forces me to do that first so that when I get to the easel, I also have more stamina. And so those are kind of important habits, little things like that even.
And I'm actually glad you brought that up, because you guys don't know, but I do have a sports medicine degree outside of all the stuff that I do. So sometimes like that habit, you train in your body to get used to a certain type of muscle memory.
Right.
So if you say you go get on the bike every day before you paint, next time you hit the bike, your body will be telling your brain, I'm ready to paint, because the next thing that will happen is painting.
Yeah.
Like you are training your body and your mind to get used to that muscle memory.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you create that habit, just kind of like a lot of people go to work for 40 years and they're retired. Like my dad, he will wake up in the morning just ready to kind of even get dressed and get ready to go to work. But then he realized, oh, I retired. So if you kind of find, for Bryan is that exercise bike, some people could be something else. You need to find something that you could turn it into part of your routine and build some type of routine in your life, and they'll kind of help too.
So let's get a little more specific now. So like for plein air painting, for instance, what I would do, I got into this rhythm of I do two plein air pieces before noon. So usually I get up pretty early, and I'd be done by 11. And then I usually, if I was up early and working hard, then you have lunch and stuff like that. I would actually take a nap because I'd be up early, working hard, baking in the sun, and not a long nap, take a small one. Else you'll be groggy, right? Power nap.
Yeah.
And then go back out around, well, it depends on the time of year, of course. When we've got in June, I wouldn't go out until maybe 5 o'clock. But then I do, 2 paintings in the evening. So, each day I had this kind of rhythm of 4 paintings a day kind of rhythm that I would do day after day. And that's something that I kind of trained myself in the when I was doing plein air events and things like that. You build up you have that stamina to do that, and it just seemed to work out. And so nowadays I do some plein air trips, and then I come back and do a lot of studio work. So my day is a little bit different, but in some ways it's, you get up, I got to do some family things. I do some exercise, and then I go paint, and then I have lunch, and then I paint again all the way till a dinner hour, and then, you know, family stuff again, and then the evening I work on some marketing and business side stuff, right? So you just kind of develop that rhythm of what your day is going to look like, so that you're not like jumping around.
Yeah.
And you know,
especially your first year, like today we focus on that first year. You gotta figure out what works for you and how to allocate your time.
Right.
Because today, imagine you just got hired, you have a full-time job, and you're going to work 8 hours a day or even more because you're your own boss now. If you're a boss, you work more than 8 hours. You got to allocate your 8 or 10 hours really well and say, what do I do in these 8 hours? And say part of it is painting, part of his business, part of his study, or whatever it is. You just got to figure that routine out and then stick to it to create a habit, because you're going to live with that habit or routine for the rest of your career.
Right. And so one of the early goals that I had was that I wanted 3, at least every week. Now, plein air events aside, because that was a little bit different. You push a lot harder there. It's almost like the hot dog eating contest, you know, where you try and cram as many hot dogs down your throat, or you try and do as many good paintings as possible in a week. But in a regular week, you know, I was trying to do, you know, 3 really great paintings a week. What I thought, at least at the time, what were really great paintings. But really what that meant is I had to do, you know, maybe 8 paintings a week in order to get the 3 really good ones. Okay. And so that's why you kind of overshoot in order to make that goal, right?
It's the batting rate we talk about, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like you said, where you bet against yourself.
Yep. Exactly. So so one of the things also you have to figure out too is, you know, everybody's kind of psychology, physiology is a little bit different. And so understanding how, you know, are you a morning person or evening person, for example, you know, figuring that out. I mean, you don't have to necessarily get up super early to feel productive. I mean, it's always good if you can.
For me, it's like I have to be late at night. Then my energy all of a sudden just come to me.
Yeah. And I really definitely get a lull in these hours, like right now, you know, just my energy level is a little bit lower. And so I don't try to start any paintings in this time. Usually I want to start them in the morning or maybe in the evening, like late evening is when I have the freshest energy for whatever reason. And so understanding that about yourself, you know, that you go through these cycles, and it may change over time as you get older, but understanding where your best vibes are throughout the day, and make sure you don't let interruptions and stuff happen, especially during those peak hours where you're mentally sharp and fresh, right?
Most productive hours, if you look at any industry, if the machine is running really well, all oiled up, ready to go, you know, after the warm up, you can print 1,000 prints. They print the best prints within those hours. Yeah. You don't use those hours to print something that is not going to sell, or just let it idle until it's overheat and you try to print 1,000 prints. It's just not going to work.
Don't even think about getting on Instagram during that time.
Yeah.
Right?
Just, you know, set a rule, put the phone away. You will have your Instagram or marketing hours later when you are kind of just sleepy. Yeah. Use those, or take a nap, and then you don't want to just like. That's another thing is when you hit those walls, you don't want to just keep dragging it on and say, "Oh, I'll just stay awake, browsing through Instagram." You're just gonna break your entire day. Right. But if you kind of go rest, take a power nap, come back, you have fresh eyes, and you can do another session.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so moving on to the next, was there any next part of your plan or next question? We'd love to hear kind of what else you're thinking about.
So the next part after the work is then the website, and then the goal is to have a website so that when I begin entering competitions, then people can say, oh, it's Mark Burrell, and they can kind of land, you know, on there. So when I had a question like, what competitions do you recommend, and when would you recommend, like, as far as
Okay, we're losing you just a little bit.
That very last part we didn't catch.
Yeah, but go ahead. Can you say it again real quick? We lost this sound a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna just, while you're doing that, I'm gonna just talk about what I did here. Okay, so as far as the competitions and things to get into, you know, at the beginning, you're trying to get it into, at least my attitude is anything and everything.
Yeah.
So I would have a goal of, you know, once a week, no matter what, I would either research things to get to submit to, or I would, nowadays there's so many plein air events, and as a landscape painter, I mean, you could literally have
things going on every other week.
Yeah,
if you want to,
yeah,
right?
you could almost do a plein air event every single week. And so, but initially when I was doing it, I think I would have actually apply to some sort of event at least once a month.
Okay.
And it didn't matter how many times I got rejected, I would just apply. And I felt like the application process was, you know, it was a cost of just doing it. And I know that, and I actually saved a lot of these rejection letters because I thought one day it might be good to show my kids. Because, you know, at the beginning I'd get a lot of rejection letters, and but I remember just getting into that one show, and then that one show turned into two turned into three, and so, you know, it just kind of spirals down there. So I think you just keep knocking on the doors, as much as you can. Now there's some shows that charge an enormous amount of money, and maybe I would steer clear of some of that stuff right now. When I say an enormous amount of money, that's like $100 an entry or something ridiculous like that. And, you know, or even like $75 an entry. I forget what this one workshop or this one show, I couldn't believe how much they were charging for it. Stuff like that I wouldn't recommend, but, you know, I'd look at other things like, hey, this is just a marketing expense, and enter, you know, all this stuff. Because you just never know what will happen. You might get some good feedback, and it might surprise you. You might get into something, right?
Yeah.
And that one thing will give you some experience to get into the next thing.
Yeah, and key takeaway from just this little portion is there are two things as a professional artist you just really got to get used to it. One is getting rejected.
Yes, right.
It's just part of the game. Don't get too hung up on it. You get rejected, move on to the next one. Just keep going. And number two thing, marketing expense. Certain things you just have to spend that money to make money.
You do,
right?
Yeah.
So, you know, like you got to start treating your career as a business. And like Mars, he's been through the, you know, business course. He knows how to kind of work on the budget to say, you know, like within this year, how much am I willing to put in towards the marketing expense?
Yeah.
Right. Because you do need to somehow get some type of capital.
Yeah.
Right. To start entering into those events. So it's you're kind of selling your work, or even part of it. Some of you might be doing another job, just kind of sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
Do I want to go full time or not? You got to start thinking about all these other expenses on top of your art supplies. Because most of them probably think, oh, I just need to cover my art supplies and canvas and food. I'm ready to go. No, if you want to do it professionally, there are other things that come with it.
Right.
And then they're part of it. I mean, it sucks that you have to pay for marketing, but at the same time, there's not such a, you know, industry that doesn't require marketing expense. Even marketing firms, they spend marketing expense themselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Which is one of the great ironies.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things you can do, just as, you know, as that simple goal, is enter into 12 competitions each year. So you got to do one a month at least.
Okay.
And then you can decide budget wise, and, you know, that would probably cost maybe $500 to enter into 12, maybe. But roughly speaking, right? So you say, okay, $500 is budgeted towards that. Fortunately, we can do digital images now. You know, I was right towards the end of slides. What a pain. What an enormous pain to do that. And now, you know, photos are, it's easier to do it from home. You know,
well, we have 5 minutes, but I want to touch up on the photos. If you are submitting your work for a show with digital images, make sure you have it done really well. If you can afford having it done professionally, have it done professionally. If you can't, figure out how to do it yourself professionally, so you don't send a work with glare, bad colors, you just getting yourself off the shelf.
Yeah, you need to,
right from the get-go.
You need to have a good image. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things people, I've judged a lot of online shows or online that becomes live later on. And, a big thing that I look at is just the image quality. Does this person know how to take it or submit a professional quality photo? And that, because that's part of the
part of being professional.
Yeah, you're like,
right?
oh, well, this guy knows, or person knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
This person, must be their first time or whatever. Yeah. So you always want to put your best foot forward as well.
Yeah. So I like your goal. I see you have a goal of, photographing artwork on Fridays. So that's another way to do it. You just set that time aside and say every Friday, and that could be your down day, right? I'm drained on Friday. I usually just am tired. Well, let's photograph artwork. But at the same time, you don't want to just snap bad pictures. Maybe part of that Friday in the beginning, that first month, I'm going to spend that Friday researching and find out how to take good photos. Then from that point on, every Friday actually count. If not, you just wasting your time on Fridays, take some bad photos and just kind of get into that bad cycle and you'll never get out of it. So whatever you do in that first year always has a purpose, and then always find ways to improve it.
Yeah.
Right.
And really, we don't talk a lot about this in the fine art world, but being efficient is actually a really important skill, because in one sense, you are actually a manufacturer. You are manufacturing, a widget, which happens to be a beautiful work of art, right? But one thing I see with a lot of professional artists is they have a production, and even for instance, I have maybe, and my wife gets mad at me for this, but I have maybe 200 frames at my house that don't have any paintings in it. But one of the reasons why I have that is because I don't want to go hunting down a painting when I have to ship it. Like I was just telling Keith here,
packaging before this.
I was packaging right before this, and this could have been a total nightmare if I didn't have 2 frames already ready for me to put paintings in. So, and I paint in certain sizes so that I can stack, I have a stack of, different sizes that I paint in. And so that it's just much more efficient that way, right? Otherwise, I'm wasting my time driving down to so-and-so's place, or, it could delay the fact that I get a painting sale or getting it off to a gallery,
And you grow into that. We're not saying like go out and buy 200 frames.
No, don't, absolutely not. You're right.
As you grow into your career, first year, you got to look at, what sales rate you are having, and then starting to kind of build up a process. It doesn't mean that you have to have 200 frames, but you need to look at your process and say, how can I improve this process? Because this quote I like to share with people is, it's, dang it, something about delayed perfection. It's continuous improvement instead of delayed perfection.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
you got to, improve it instead of saying, I need this to be perfect and just keep delaying it, because that perfection is never going to come. But you got to start from somewhere and just continuously improve that as you go and as you go and as you go. Because if you're doing the right thing, your tomorrow is always going to be better than yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
And today you're just working towards that better tomorrow. And if you look at it that way, you create the momentum and you're really making it happen. Yeah. So, you got to have a goal, but don't overshoot yourself. Have a big 5-year, general goal, but then narrow into your first year, and then break it down to your first quarter and just start checking off things off your list and just keep going with it. So,
and in fact, just in closing, there's another artist I'd like to, we should definitely interview. Yeah. And we won't connect to what we just said, what I say now, but not the best painter. Let's just put it that way. But he is the most efficient, smartest businessman, and he does huge paintings, and he creates like 800 a year.
Wow.
It's amazing.
800 paintings.
But he's got beautiful efficiency in what he does.
I kind of know where it's going, but
anyway, that little things like that are important, in terms of what makes an artist successful and be able to make a living. So I hope this conversation, I wish we had more time to do this, but I hope this has been helpful, Mark. I'm really impressed with what you're doing, going through the business course, getting your plan out there. I think, getting specific about some of the numbers and things like that. I think those are all really good things.
Yeah. And thank you for tuning in for those ones who are here. And if you have more questions, feel free to, sign up to the business course. We have an interactive feature there. And as you can see, Mark here, we've been going back and forth, have a lot of Q&A sessions, because a lot of times you do need a mentor to just kind of keep you going.
Yes.
And we're here for you guys. So thank you so much and have a good night.
All right. Thanks.
Do we lose Mark? Okay, there you go. Okay, see you later, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Absolutely. Sorry we lost your sound a little halfway into it, or not halfway, just towards the end there.
No, that's fine. I think I muted it. So just because you guys were talking. So just to eliminate the background noise. So,
okay. Yeah. Well, we'll see you next time.